This episode is brought to you by the Marine Corps Association and Modern Day Marine. Attention, Scuttlebutt listeners. Prepare for an incredible experience at the Modern Day Marine Expo, happening April 30th to May 2nd at the Walter E. Washington Convention Center. Dive deep into military advancements and networking. Plus, the Objective One Wargaming Convention is back for its second year. Expect nothing short of awesomeness, so bring your A game. Don't miss out. Secure your spot now. Also, Nancy, William, and I will be on site recording episodes live from the showroom floor. Come by and say hi. Visit MarineMilitaryExpos.com for more details and to register. That's MarineMilitaryExpos.com. Hope to see you there.
Hello, audience. Welcome back to another episode of Scuttlebutt. I am William, and today we're doing another installment of Semper Cinema, where we talk about our favorite Marine Corps films. Today, I am here with Vic and Nancy.
Hey.
Hey, everyone.
And we're going to talk about a true classic, Full Metal Jacket. For those who have not seen the film, it is probably one of the most quintessential pieces of Marine Corps I guess, was it cultural?
Yeah, as far as the cultural
expressions.
consciousness, yeah, like everyone thinks when you think Marines, Full Metal Jacket's definitely on the forefront of everyone's mind.
Absolutely. It was directed by Stanley Kubrick and released in 1987 based on the the book titled Short Timers by Gustav Hasford, who was a Marine veteran and actually a leatherneck writer. The more you know.
I did not know that. That is interesting.
Yeah, apparently he wrote for like Stars and Stripes and Leatherneck while in Vietnam, and then he was a kleptomaniac who stole a bunch of books from libraries and died of diabetes in like his 40s.
Wait, so was he the
wait.
Joker character?
No, he was the book is based off of, it's fictional.
Oh, okay.
But there's some overlap between the film and the book in terms of characters, but not everything lines up perfectly. And most quintessentially, though, to the film, it stars R. Lee Ermey in his Golden Globe winning performance as the boot camp.
Yeah, the senior drill instructor.
The drill instructor. So, anyways, as we do with all of our film reviews, we are going to start off with our Amazon review to talk about, how we would rate this just if we're just, had time to kill and win on Amazon. So 1 to 5 stars, and then why? We'll start off with Vic.
5 stars for sure. I guess from a couple aspects. One, cinematically, it's just beautifully shot. The scenes that they have, I just really thought that, and obviously it's Stanley Kubrick, so this is what you come to expect. But the way it's shot, the way that he sets the tone, I was thinking about it as we're watching it, like within the almost 3/4 of the way through the boot camp scenes, there really isn't a ton of dialogue. So you're really set in this it really sets this environment where you're basically in boot camp. Like you're only interacting when the senior drill instructor tells you that you can interact. So I thought that was really well done. From a military accuracy standpoint, I really enjoyed it. I didn't obviously serve in the Vietnam War. I wasn't alive during the Vietnam War. So I'm not certain of the specifics of how boot camp would have been back then, how Marines would have operated. But just from what I understand of the war, of the conflict, I thought their equipment looked great. I thought that their, rifle carry was good. The way that they did boot camp is very similar in many respects, also very dissimilar to my experiences going through OCS. So, 5 stars.
All right, Nancy.
I give it 5 stars, and I don't know if I could crystallize into a few sentences why I would give it 5 stars. It's thought-provoking. I don't think it has one particular point of view. I've heard people say that they think Kubrick was trying to make an anti-war film, but I don't think it's, strictly speaking, an anti-war film or an anti-military film. I think there are so many different facets of this. Agree with what you said, Vic, about the cinematography. It's just beautifully done. And I don't think there's any more or less dialogue than is needed. It's the perfect amount. It's a very tight product. There's no scene that I would say, ooh, yeah, we really didn't need that, or why did we go in that direction? I recently saw it on the big screen for the first time, which was a different experience, having only ever seen it. The first time I saw it, it was a Blockbuster VHS tape rental on a date back in my early 20s. That's a weird date. That was the only date with that person. But anyway, so it was different to see it, and it was also different to see it now after having been at Leatherneck for so long. I think the last time I saw it was maybe 10 or 15 years ago when I was new to Leatherneck. So I had yet a different perspective. And since that time, I have met and developed friendships with some of the combat correspondents who were at Way City and were doing the same kind of thing that Private Joker was doing. So I think I had a lot more life experience, although again not as a Marine. I had a lot more life experience to bring to this viewing of it, and it just checks all the boxes, hits all the high notes, and it's a movie that you walk away from. For me, what makes a really good movie is I walk away from it and I'm thinking about it for days and days and days later, just different parts of it, different aspects of it.
Well, we were talking before we started recording how I think this is the first time I've seen the movie since having been a Marine.
Really?
Yeah, so I saw it a bunch of times before joining the Marine Corps, and I don't think I actually watched it in my 20 years, interestingly enough. Maybe because I got it all out of my system before I joined. But I will say, to your comment about it, whether it's an anti-war, anti-military movie, when my wife and I first started dating, one of the things she said was she had some apprehension because her understanding of what the military was like came from movies like this, and sort of had this feeling that, like, although she's thankful for service members' sacrifice and what we do, that there's a certain, lack of a better term, certain craziness that either attracts people to the military, or that you're not coming out of the other side a sort of normal, stable kind of person, based on how the Marines that are the characters in the movie are depicted. So I will say, to that extent, regardless of, and I'm sure we'll talk about some of Kubrick's intention in making this movie and shooting it the way he did, that there is that sort of effect, like with any art, once you've completed it and you've given it out, it's no longer yours. And so, it's everybody else's for them to then take on their own and make their judgments about what was happening. But yeah, it was really interesting. And then to see, as Roxanne became more and more immersed in the sort of the Marine culture, realizing that, like, oh, that's not how Marines are all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
Well, to close it up, I agree. I think this is our first, mutual 5-star film. Not to reiterate any of the points you made, but it's interesting how, the film became larger than life and truly shaped how the average viewer, let alone American, perceived the Marine Corps, and it's such that it's become almost institutional within the Marine Corps.
What about
itself.
You as a Marine kid? Like, how did that, like, what was it for you to see this?
I saw it.
Like, did you look at your parents and go, holy shit?
Well, to be fair, I grew up watching war movies at an inappropriate age, so it had already been scarred for life by the time I saw Saving Private Ryan when I was fucking 8 years old, and that
explains a lot.
Yeah, it explains a lot. And I've seen tons of Marine Corps movies, and I think I grew up, my dad deployed, so I grew up, I guess, sort of as much as a child could, a sense of patriotism. So then seeing a lot of Vietnam movies sort of threw a wrench in that. I was like, what the hell? Why are, which we're going to go into later in our discussion. But it definitely, makes you think a lot different than seeing another war film. It doesn't have the patriotism that a lot of the films I'd seen previous to it had. And one thing sort of struck me is really none of the characters are overtly sympathetic, aside from the fact that they're just average people. I mean, a lot goes on that touches on, the cultural psyche of the era, especially, looking at the racism, looking at, the fact that all these guys are buying prostitutes in every scene. So it definitely, shatters that illusion on these young me. Not when I saw this, probably first time I was like 12 or 13. It definitely helped contribute to shattering the illusion of the inherent American morality that you see in a lot of other war
Yeah,
films.
sure.
So going on to my next question then is, after our reviews, who is the audience of this film? It grossed, I believe, was $130 million on a $40 to $50 million budget. So it was
I'd say
obviously
back in 1987, that's like $2 or $3 billion by today's standards.
exactly.
Yeah.
And as we mentioned, it has wide appeal. But who did Stanley Kubrick make this film for, Nancy?
I don't know who he made it for. I
Yeah.
don't. Does anyone know who he makes any of his films for?
Well, you can kind of tell by the tone of the audience. Like who would you expect to go see a film like this?
So, who I would expect to go see it doesn't necessarily mean that's who he made it for. I think Stanley Kubrick made his
there should
films
be-
for himself.
Mhm.
That's what I think.
Well, I guess just really quick, I don't mean to cut you off, but where does this movie sort of stand in the Kubrick catalog? Like, because obviously there was like Clockwork Orange, right?
2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yeah. So like, I guess what I'm asking is he's by 1987 he is well established that he has a specific voice, right? Like people know when you go to a
Yes.
Kubrick film, this is what you're going to be getting, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know if I have an answer for that question. I know who it appeals to, but I can't say, having not looked into this specifically, that that's who he was making his
Mhm.
film for. Maybe he. I don't know. I don't know who his
All right,
audience is.
all
I
right.
don't know who he intended his audience to be. I'm not going to answer that question.
All
I
right.
don't know.
Vic.
I'm going to give it a shot, but I do sympathize with your point of view on this because I found it, even watching it again last night, unsure. Because one, like we were talking about, like people are going to, Kubrick is going to attract a certain type of viewer, probably, pretty artsy fartsy, people who are drawn to very deep characters, complex storylines. You're gonna be uncomfortable through most of the movie. You're gonna walk away not really knowing like who to cheer for. So yeah, I think that you're gonna probably get people who will be anti-war, anti-military, and I don't mean anti is such a weird,
It is a weird word.
broad stroke, but like people who are reticent about the American military machine, who probably are not big fans of just going to war, especially with open-ended agendas. And so, but at the same time, when you look at how he treats the Marine Corps, even with your most cynical anti-heroes within that tapestry, they're all very pro-Marine. Like all of them love the Marine Corps, even with everything that they got going on and all of the stuff that they show with the sort of inept leadership, all of these different contrasting, that thing where that colonel who, I don't know if you guys, but the colonel who's wire brushing Joker, his satines are completely clean. He doesn't have a speck of dirt on him,
Yeah, I
no
noticed that.
gear. He is a total pogue, and he's wire brushing Joker.
I think his hair's a little long too, wasn't it?
And again, I wasn't there during the time, but from what I understand, I mean, folks in country kind of let their regs, like they weren't really,
Well, also a lot of times in movies, especially war movies, they'll throw medals on people just so that the audience knows that they're a person of rank
Yeah,
and
yeah.
importance. So there's
Yeah.
that.
But
factor.
he's wire brushing him about his him depicting his own
duality of
but
man,
yet
yeah.
he's completely ignorant of the fact that anyways, so there's those types of things where you're seeing, like, he's intentionally making us have to think, and we're conflicted on how we're supposed to do it. So but at the same time, I'm sure there's a ton of Marines who joined post 1987 who are like, it's Full Metal Jacket. That's why I joined the Marine Corps.
So,
you know,
picking up on what you said, then maybe I do have an answer. Maybe his audience was for the, as you said, the artsy fartsy types, to make them interrogate their own dislike, mistrust of the military, because it's unmistakable that bond, that
yeah,
brotherhood, and the self-sacrifice that occurs within the combat
yeah. I
setting.
mean, even as Animal Mother is using racial slurs against 8 Ball, he still is throwing himself into this situation because he wants to save 8 Ball. I mean, it's so dense.
It
The
is. You're
movie's
right.
so
You're
dense.
right. William, what do you think?
Going off the top of my head, primarily a male audience, leaning um socially left, but not to the extent where it would exclude traditional right. And I imagine a lot of traditional right people and Vietnam veterans may have spoken out against the film. It is, I mean, again, it tries to really its best to strip down, and some may have not approved of their generation being portrayed that way. But again, because it is a war film, you're gonna get the people interested in military history and whatnot to come in and evaluate it based on that. And to some of those people who are looking for, like battles and information on tactics and whatnot, you really don't get that. You really get the more personal experience, which again appeals to the artsy people, but also general historians as well. Um, and so going from there, why is Vietnam the film addressed? To what extent is the Vietnam War films that we've seen its own subgenre within greater war films? And then how does Full Metal Jacket fit the mold?
Ooh, good question.
Seriously.
Well, let's get some good answers.
We might have to go to a different podcast.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, so I will say, because I thought about this as, for whatever reason, I think maybe because it was Rolling Stones, what is it, Paint to Black. I just wanted to hear the song in its entirety. But yeah, when I saw that it was 87, I was thinking, well, we officially were like on the books, we were done in 72, but we still had folks there until 74, 75. My mom came over in 75. So we're only a decade or so removed from the war, so I think it was still very visceral.
Yeah.
So I think that played into why Kubrick wanted to do a Vietnam War movie. Obviously, highly unpopular. We've talked in other shows about how the Korean War has sort of gotten swept under because it's, bookended between these two really conscious, World War II and Vietnam.
Mhm.
But I think when you look at the movies that were coming out at the time, Hamburger Hill, Platoon, Deer Hunter, that there was, and even to a certain extent, First Blood, Rambo, that there was this sense of, I think the Vietnam veteran crisis, post-traumatic stress in the veteran, suicide and homeless rates were so high. The late 80s was sort of a crime spree in America also, and there are a lot of veterans involved in with the outlaw motorcycle gangs and things. So all that is to say, I think that there were a lot of people who were looking at American society and wanted to dive into where is this coming from, and why have we forgotten about these guys, and what is it that they actually went through, which is why we're seeing the after effects of it now. It's the war sort of come home in that regard. I don't know.
Maybe he just saw a market with the popularity in other
But it is
Vietnam
so
films.
different than the other
It
films.
is very
though.
different. Very different.
So,
Well, how is it different from those films?
well, like Hamburger Hill, for example, I mean, you get to see the entire platoon and company. All of the fighting scenes are, you're not dialed in like microscope on one particular service member or even a squad. Like, I think the largest formation you see, other than the end scene where they're marching, is a squad, like 13-man squad. Even when they're assaulting Wei, you see only like a couple tanks. When the Tet attack on was it Da Nang, it's just those guys in that fighting hole, and there's only like maybe 20 VC that try to run the gate. So everything is very microscopic in its portrayal. Whereas Hamburger Hills, I think of, as I remember, was a much larger scale. You see like, dozens upon dozens of service members. Platoon obviously was the platoon. There was different squads, and then the different cultures within those squads. Um, I guess Deer Hunter wasn't quite. That was more dialed in on just those 4 guys.
right.
But yeah, I guess that was my takeaway on it, and is that there was so much more exploration of like the individual characters in a way.
All right, Nancy.
What? What were we asking?
Just essentially, how does this film fit the mold of, I guess, like the subgenre of Vietnam War films? How does and how does it not?
Well, I don't know that I'm informed enough to answer that question either, because in my house growing up, my dad was a Vietnam era veteran, not in combat. He was a submariner, so hopefully there was no combat there. But my dad was very anti Vietnam, and so there was certainly we wouldn't have been watching any of those movies at home on VHS or on HBO when they came out, and was not encouraged to go see them. I was not told I wasn't allowed to, but also in the 80s, I was a teenage girl, not a teenage boy. So that's just not the kind of movie I was going to see at that age.
So I think you brought up an interesting point. Why was he anti? I guess the depiction of the Vietnam War.
Why was he anti that? Because they all, I think from my dad's perspective at that time, is they all had a very anti-military, anti-patriotic feel to him. I'm saying that was his perspective. And I know that he flat out wouldn't see any Jane Fonda film.
Yeah.
With one
Hanoi
exception,
Jane,
with one exception, he would watch the movie Cat Ballou because she made that before. That was his like workaround there. So we weren't watching those movies at home. We weren't talking about them around the table at home. And I know, if I got together with my friends and went out to see a movie, we weren't choosing to go see Platoon and any of the movies we're talking about. I had to come back to all those movies later. And there are some I've never seen. Hamburger Hill, I have to confess.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
So I'm catching up. I'm playing catch up. And again, like I said, I was in my early 20s. Maybe I might have been 20 when I saw Full Metal Jacket for the first time, and it was already out on videotape. That should give you some idea of that it wasn't super current then. I'm kind of circling back to them.
Do you believe that like a large segment of, maybe not necessarily veteran population, but American population perceives like that, I guess, and well, I using the term loosely, anti-war, anti-militarism as being an inherent trait of Vietnam War films, except for maybe
yes.
one, except for
Green
maybe
Berets?
one. Well, 2 Green Berets, and then We Were Soldiers.
Oh yeah.
Which have markedly different.
Right.
The 2 together have markedly different tones than all the other films we've witnessed.
So, yeah.
So could this story, this film, plot-wise, be made with other American wars?
Sure, I think so. So this is one of the things I was thinking, and hopefully this isn't a question you have future, but like tactically, I have a hard time separating my own experiences from when I watch these movies, and so a lot of times I do look at the tactics, and whereas if I watch a more modern film, like I don't know, Zero Dark 30 or Lone Survivor or was American Sniper, these sorts of things. I have sort of an encyclopedia that I'm bringing to the film, and then and so I'm looking and like, that's not how you do it, or you need to get more dispersion, or whatever. Like, that's not how you talk on the radio, or what. But the understanding sort of my limited understanding of the Vietnam War and then and how things were going, I was able to sort of divorce myself from that, because I'm like, I don't know how these guys operated. I know, from my understanding, recruit training was shorter. They didn't have IOC for infantry officers course. I don't think SOI was probably more condensed. Because we're just trying to get people in country.
Right.
So I mean, I don't want to say that obviously Vietnam vets were highly professional and very good at their jobs. I just don't know what the tactics look like back then. So I was able to just sort of watch and enjoy the film. But I will say that, like, you could, at least from the plot standpoint, you could definitely take that and put it into like a Fallujah video or a, Tora Bora video, a movie, or these sorts of
So
depictions.
it's interesting that you mentioned Fallujah and Tora Bora. Why did you pick those out of your head?
Well, because Way City, right? Like these are the sort of meat grinder, known battles of the current era.
Well, yeah, exactly. But you didn't, there's plenty of meat grinder battles in the Marine Corps' history. But don't you think like the connection between the similar circumstances of Afghanistan and Vietnam, perhaps, especially how they unfolded?
I definitely think about that. I feel, and again, highly biased in my opinion here. Like, again, I'm bringing my own encyclopedia, but I don't know how many Marines who fought in the global war on terror would have the same cynical look on, especially like Marine Corps leadership, that you see depicted in Full Metal Jacket.
Interesting.
Even if you have Marines that maybe are just like, refer to officers as zeros, or think that there's just sort of an ivory tower. They're not fans of the rigid hierarchy within the military. I don't think there's any in there that felt like their officers were inept. Or that we're intentionally trying to get them killed, or we're going to put them in a situation they themselves wouldn't also go into.
This is coming from Major Vic Rubel, by the way.
Again, retired as Major, so it's not like I think it's important to make that differentiation. But I know, again, from my own experiences, I never, even if I didn't like an officer, I never thought that they had their heads way up. Well, maybe that's not true. But
they were inept. You didn't think they were inept?
9 out of 10 officers I felt like were at least good officers, even if they weren't either good tacticians or weren't, meat eaters per se. I never really felt like this guy's going to get me fucking killed. And I hope there were no Marines that ever felt that way about me. Again, retired as Major. But so I think that level of cynicism, and I think too, the way that we as military leadership communicated with junior Marines, junior officers, junior enlisted, and we really, really pushed, you have to keep your Marines informed. Like, you can't, unless you absolutely have to like give a frago on the fly, you have to take every opportunity to give a good brief, ask questions of your Marines, let them have buy-in, and do rehearsals so that everybody knows, like, what is your task and purpose? What is commander's intent? What is it that we're actually doing here? So there was never this idea that like, with these guys, we're just political pawns. We're just getting thrown to the meat grinders for somebody's agenda on the hill, sort of thing. I don't know. I'm rambling.
And Vic, you and I just talked about that, keeping in an interview. I don't know when it's going to air.
It'll be after this. Yeah.
With Lieutenant Colonel Tom Schumann, about the importance of keeping your Marines informed and how important it is for that open communication. So interesting that you just brought that up.
Yeah, because you like thinking Full Metal Jacket, like every interaction that any of the Marines have with their officers is contentious. Like even around the table when they're talking the stories that they're going to run from Stars and Stripes, like there's tension there, and there's clearly an
Yes.
ideological difference between what the guys in the field are doing. Like even when he says like, "Well, why don't you go out into the shit?" And he's like,
Yeah.
I did it. I'm right where I need to be."
Yeah.
In the rear with the gear, and they were. I would beg to say you would never have heard that from a Marine officer during the global war on terror.
So, interesting little add on to that part that you were just talking about. The Leatherneckers who I've known over the years who were in Vietnam covering the war for Leatherneck, they said they just had they could go anywhere they wanted, wherever they could get to, whatever they wanted to do, they were on their own and didn't have to, go cover Anne Margaret arriving at the, although that was clearly a thing they would want to do. But anyway, they went where they wanted to go, did what they wanted to do, wrote the stories, and took the photos they wanted to do, and sent them back to Leatherneck. Just a little interesting, behind the scenes piece about that little, which was different from what we saw in terms of that Stars and Stripes staff. Whether that was realistic or not, I don't know.
So Nancy, do you think this film could be made with in relation to other American wars?
I do. I think that it has some themes that stretch throughout whatever conflict or war we're talking about, and just basically what it is to serve alongside somebody. So I'll just touch on the themes without talking about specific battles, because clearly I don't have any experience there. But the themes of taking boys and turning them, politically incorrect as it may be, but in this movie the theme was taking boys and turning them into men, taking individuals and making them a group, a unit who would give their lives for one another. I don't think those themes are any different in any era. Do you disagree with that, Vic?
No, 100%. So, yeah, I mean, and you see that in the very beginning. I think it was a well done opening sequence of them shaving their heads,
and just the idea that they came from so many. As always, you come from all walks of life, all backgrounds, but none of that really matters when you've got to learn what you've got to learn in order to be successful as a Marine. And so I'll bring this in here a little bit. So I recently saw the movie at the National Museum of the Marine Corps in a special screening. There's a new exhibit at the museum called Full Metal Modine. Matthew Modine, the actor who plays Private Joker, took photographs on set while he was making the movie. And so those photographs are now on display at the museum. And they've been printed specially on metal. So the prints are on metal. Yeah, full metal. Nice. Full Metal Modine. And according to Matthew Modine, he did a Q&A after the screening and said that, he shows up, he's got this camera, a friend of his gave him a camera, and he's taking pictures. And Stanley Kubrick pulled him aside, and he was like, if you're going to take photos on my set, you better, you're going to have to get a better camera than that. And told him what kind of camera to get, what kind of camera bag to get, the whole 9 yards. So he took these incredible photos. Go see it. Shameless plug for the museum. Yeah, totally. Really interesting exhibit. And he talked a little bit about the idea of R. Lee Ermey's character and how in another director's hands that character might have been hated, and the audience might have cheered when
spoiler alert.
Private Pot. Yeah. Oh, come on. Come on. How the audience might have been glad when he met his untimely demise. Yeah. How's that? But not so, because I think inherently, if you're really paying attention to the movie, I think you have an understanding of what he was doing, what that character was doing, why he was so hard on them. I mean, his language, maybe it was a little uncomfortable to watch that movie in 2024 in a crowded theater with people who I was sitting next to someone, a lovely lady who's in her late 70s. And so, I was kind of cringing, like, oh man, is this too salty for her? She didn't have an issue with it. But maybe some of that language might have been a little different. It's pretty raw, it's pretty gritty. But again, I think that those themes are universal to any period of time in the United States military. Although I say that with a full disclaimer that I've never served, so I don't want to presume.
Well, and as far as speaking of Arlie Ermy, as far as I understand it, sort of the genesis of that character was he was the technical advisor.
That's correct.
And whoever he was advising wasn't hitting it, and Kubrick was just like, "Why don't you just do it?"
So here's the background
Okay.
that we heard from Matthew Modine.
Okay, cool, yeah.
On that, they filmed the movie in reverse order. So they did all the Vietnam scenes first.
Okay.
So that when they got their heads
I see.
shaved in the boot camp scene, that's
Yeah,
them
they didn't
getting
have to
their
wait
heads
for their hair to
shaved.
grow back.
Correct.
Yeah.
They filmed it in reverse, and during the Vietnam scenes, there were some hiring of extras and training of those extras to do all the boot camp scenes. And Arlie Ermy as the technical advisor there for the Vietnam scenes. So I don't remember the actor's name. The actor who was hired to play, was it Gunnery Sergeant Hartman? Was that the character's name?
I think that's his name, yeah.
That actor ended up having a small role in the movie. He's the door gunner in the helicopter.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, yeah. He was originally hired to play the DI, Gunnery Sergeant Hartman, and he would just kind of, apparently he was kind of dialing it in as he's training and auditioning these recruits. He would do one sort of session with them full on, but then knowing it was just rehearsal and that kind of thing, he dialed it in. So they'd bring Arlie Ermy in to work these people who were auditioning, and he went full on because he actually, I've later heard and read, I didn't hear this from Matthew Modine, that Arlie Ermy wanted the part.
Oh, okay.
He wanted the part, and he went for it, and that's how that. At first, they just took what he was saying because his dialogue was so colorful, and it's like, oh my gosh, we got to get this down, we got to get this in the script, and then eventually he had the role, and that's how he ended up playing that role. So as a consolation prize, that actor whose name escapes me plays the door gunner in the helicopter.
Interesting. So I might have to disagree with y'all on whether this could be done with other American wars, at least in American cinema. But I think I need to ask my next question first. What is the Vietnam War in the American consciousness?
Wow.
Let me speak for all Americans.
Yeah. It depends on who's answering the question and whose consciousness you're talking about, because I just gave you my experience growing up, teenage me in the 1980s with my dad, who was a military veteran and didn't necessarily go willingly. It wasn't his goal to join the military. He was drafted. He had just graduated from medical school, and his understanding was if you were all medical school graduates, there was 100% service required. So he kind of did a lead turn on that and chose the Navy. But so I grew up with a very specific perspective of what the Vietnam War was and what it meant. And, don't listen to that anti-war crap. And, I'm just saying what was, conveyed to me. And the idea that the counterculture of the 1960s was, something that got a lot of eye rolls and head shakes in my family growing up. So I think my perspective, is largely informed by what my parents' perspective was. Somebody else's perspective is going to be completely different.
All right, Vic.
Yeah, well, and I guess as much as it matters, coming from the Vietnamese refugee diaspora, this movie probably isn't one that a good portion of my family would watch, and if they did, would find it entertaining in the least. Um, I think it probably does hit a little close to home, but from a artistic standpoint, I feel like it's pretty timeless. It's so well done. You feel all the big feels at the time that he wants you to feel the big feels. You're getting the big feels that he wants you to feel. You're conflicted and confused when it's over.
The duality of man.
It's so rich in its messaging. Coming out of Gwat, I guess again from an era standpoint, probably within the aughts, it would have been continued to be very well received. Now that we're out of the Long War, we're able to sort of see the gruesomeness of warfare from the cheap seats. Obviously, we have Marines and service members in harm's way, but not at the magnitude that we did for almost 2 decades. So you'd have to. What are you coming into the movie like? What are your sort of preconceived notions coming in? Not just about Kubrick, not just about this movie, but about America's role in the world, what the military is as a part of that role. I'm not sure we're in an era anymore where people are so discerning that things like this would challenge those things because it is so dense. I think you'll find anything that would support your preconceived notions that you're bringing in. You'll see something and go, see, exactly. Or from the other side, like, this is what I'm talking about, And so, I don't know. I don't know.
Interesting note, after the screening at the museum, during the Q&A session, not one question was asked of Matthew Modine about his photos or the exhibit. Every question was about the movie, which to me speaks volumes about the enduring themes within.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
So to throw a wrench, so I
Yeah.
believe that at least how the Vietnam War is viewed in the American consciousness, there's like 3 primary, like, I guess, universalities that I'll say. The first is that it is controversial, that you're going to have an opinion of the Vietnam War and it will lean one way or another, and that there isn't really a general consensus. Like, for instance, we'll say World War II. You're not going to have many people viewing World War II as controversial in the sense of whether we should have been there or not. There's a generally accepted idea in the American consciousness that we needed to be in World War II. They were on the right side, and we did it for good reasons. You don't have that for Vietnam. Now, the other, I guess, what I'd say is universality of the Vietnam War in America's consciousness is that there is this aspect of tragic defeat. That the fact that we did not win politically and thus militarily is a part of how we perceive the Vietnam War. And finally is this idea that the war is a regret, and doesn't matter which side of the political spectrum you fall on. It's a regret that we were there in the first place, or that there is a regret that we didn't do enough or do what was required to win it military and politically. So those, when I think of the Vietnam War, of how it's used in the American consciousness, those are the main things. So then going back to our previous question of whether this film could be made with other wars, I think it certainly could be done in other wars in similar circumstances. I think you could easily do an Iraq or Afghanistan war film with these sorts of stories. I think it would be harder for a director to try to pull this off in World War II, at least from maybe
Sure.
the Allies' perspective,
Okay.
maybe a German perspective.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, Clint Eastwood tried, right, with the 2 films, the Flags of Our Fathers and Sands of Iwo Jima, right? Like, yeah, or
potentially. I mean, I maybe from the, because the Flags of Our Father, that's a pretty it encompasses one of the most patriotic, and you don't get the sense that that these Marines don't feel like they are not
That's true.
fighting for
Yeah, true,
something.
true,
Because
true.
there is one poignant scene in Full Metal Jacket where they literally are pretending like they're a news crew interviewing like Marines of, why are we in Vietnam?
Right.
I think you would be hard pressed as an American to do perhaps a World War II film with that. Maybe a revolutionary film to
Yeah.
portray the themes in the same way,
That's a good point.
especially because every war has its own identity in the American consciousness that we all view it in certain ways. And I mean, would you want to have a Civil War film saying like we fought for nothing? It's like, well, maybe we could add some of the bigger pictures to that on either side. But because of the way that the Vietnam War is portrayed in American society, that it's so unique that it would be hard to copy those themes over.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as my final question, I like to ask, what is the film's argument?
Yeah, I don't know if you could nail down a single one. Again, I go back to like watching it and as a Marine feeling like they did a good job depicting Marines. Maybe the individual characters are, rough around the edges or messy. But so are people. Like there were no two-dimensional characters. I mean, even Private Snowball has depth, and so there's no one who comes out unscathed, but there's no one that is completely, despicable either. So to nail down like what is the central thesis of this exploration is, I think the central thesis would be that like war is messy.
The duality of man.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go. How about you?
Again, I would probably agree with you in the fact that add the war is hell aspect, but also throw in that war is also the hell is mundane. There's no big emphasis of build up to a major fight like you see in a lot of films. Like there's like
Sure.
the ultimate battle. There's a lot of mundanity. There's horrible things happens along the way, and then it just kind of goes on. And it tries to just show like that the war is an everyday evil. It's not just building up to this one moment. It just keeps on happening.
Yeah, there was an interesting scene along what you're saying where they're radioing back to I think it was the platoon leader Murphy or whatever, and their squad leader had just been killed by the booby trap. Well, he was dying from his wounds. Doc's working on him, and he gets the radio call. Hey, you're the senior NCO. The squad's yours now. And then, almost as if this dying Marine isn't even there, Joker looks over to him like, "Oh, I'll follow you into hell," And then Doc says, "He's dead." And then you see the look on their face, and so there's this weird like you said, like the chaos had become mundane until it wasn't, and it's all right there in that scene where like Joker's almost completely oblivious to the fact that this guy is dying right like inches away from him. Cowboy is taking on the fact that holy shit, this is like, am I ready to do this? And Doc is focused solely on trying to save this guy's life, and all of that right there. Yeah, so is there again? It's geniusly depicted.
It's rich with concepts, ideas, a lot of little vignettes throughout the movie. I'm gonna fall back on. Instead of giving my own personal thoughts, just another observance during this Q&A, somebody asked Matthew Modine if he thought that the cut between the boot camp scene and then into Vietnam was too abrupt. Thank you. And Modine's response was, "Well, how would you have done it? How else do you do it?" And so I just kept thinking about that again. This movie, for the last 2 weeks, like every now and then, it pops into my mind, and I'm thinking about some of these concepts and themes and ideas. And so I've been thinking about that ending, or the ending to that first part, ever since then. And the ending to the first part almost exactly mirrors the ending of the film. The kind of tight shots on Private Joker, and but this time he's the one holding the gun and making the decision.
Wow, nice. I actually didn't even pick up on that.
And I just can't help but think, because again, we all bring our own baggage, our own, we project our own ideas onto these characters on the screen, but I can't help but think that everything that happens during boot camp, whereas somebody might look at that and say, oh my gosh, that's cruel, that's hazing, that was awful. We shouldn't be allowing people to treat recruits like that, but all of that prepared him to make the decision he had to make, or to make that decision at the end of the movie. Those are my thoughts.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answered your question or what,
No.
but that's what I've got for you.
All right. Well, anyways, I think we had a good discussion here.
Well, wait, what do you think it was?
Excuse me?
The central thesis of the...
I told you it was pretty much, mundanity of war,
got it,
and, war is hell. But, so anyways, well, audience, thanks again for tuning into another episode of Semper Cinema, Semper Cinema with an N. We hope you enjoyed it. We're going to do another one. If you have any recommendations, please feel free to email us. We'd happily like to pick apart any Marine Corps related film. And, signing off.
And go see Full Metal Modine if you're near the National Museum of the Marine Corps. Cool photos, really cool photos.
Nice plug.
Hell yeah. Awesome. Peace out.
Calling all Marines and their families. Gear up for the Modern Day Marine Expo at the Walter E. Washington Convention Center, going April 30th to May 2nd. Uncover the latest military innovations, and don't miss the exclusive Military Spouse Summit. Hear firsthand from leaders about policies impacting and supporting Marine Corps families. It's your chance to be informed and connected. Secure your spot today. Visit MarineMilitaryExpos.com for more details and to register. That's MarineMilitaryExpos.com. We would like to thank the Marine Corps Association and Modern Day Marine for sponsoring this episode. Scuttlebutt is a production of the Marine Corps Association. You have heard the voices or contributions from Major Vic Rubel, USMC retired, Nancy Litchman, and William Trudy. Ty Frazier is the editor, sound engineer, and technical producer. The Marine Corps Association is not an agency of the United States government. The opinions expressed in this episode are the personal views of the participants and do not reflect the official position of the United States Marine Corps, the Department of Defense, or the Marine Corps Association.